Groc Ai compares Karl Ferris' 60s photography to David Bailey's 60s photography. Karl Ferris and David Bailey were both prominent British photographers active in the 1960s, a transformative decade for photography, fashion, music, and youth culture in London, often called Swinging London. However, their styles, subject matter, and approaches diverged significantly, reflecting different facets of the era. Karl Ferris's 1960s photography. Karl Ferris is widely recognized as the principal innovator or father of psychedelic photography. His work embodied the late 1960s counterculture, particularly the psychedelic rock scene, where he was called the icon with a Nikon. Style characteristics: highly experimental and colorful, with vibrant, saturated hues, swirling multicolored effects, and surreal distortions. He pioneered techniques like infrared film, often military-grade for false color effects, fisheye lenses for warped perspectives, color filtration, multiple exposures montage, and heavy saturation to create otherworldly, mind-bending images that evoked hallucinogenic experiences. Subjects and context: primarily music-related. Personal photographer and image consultant for artists like Jimi Hendrix, shooting covers for Are You Experienced? Axis: bold as love, electric ladyland, and more. Donovan, e.g., A Gift from a Flower to a Garden, Cream, The Hollies, and others. He also captured fashion and portraits tied to psychedelic art collectives like The Fool, often featuring clashing patterns, bright colors, and immersive, trippy compositions. Overall aesthetic: bold, immersive, and anti-establishment, designed to visually mirror the psychedelic drug culture, rock music explosion, and flower power vibe. His images feel expansive, dreamlike, and innovative, often prefiguring digital manipulation. Here are some representative examples of his iconic psychedelic style. David Bailey's 1960s photography. David Bailey was one of the leading figures in fashion and portrait photography, helping define the glamour and cool of early to mid-1960s swinging London. Style characteristics: minimalist, direct, and informal. He favored high-contrast black and white images, stark white backgrounds to isolate subjects, tight cropping, natural lighting, and a sense of spontaneity. He rejected stiff, formal poses in favor of capturing personality, energy, and authenticity. Subjects and context: fashion models, celebrities, musicians, actors, and street scenes. He shot for Vogue and documented icons of the era, e.g., the Rolling Stones, models like Jean Shrimpton, and figures from music film. His work often blended fashion, portraiture, and documentary elements, reflecting the youthful, rebellious spirit of the time without overt experimentation. Overall aesthetic: sleek, modern, sexy, and effortlessly cool, emphasizing realism, minimalism, and the subject's charisma over visual effects. His portraits feel intimate and immediate, helping popularize a new informality in fashion photography. Here are some representative examples of his work. Key comparisons: color versus monochrome. Ferris embraced vivid, manipulated color as central to his psychedelic vision. Bailey largely stuck to stark black and white for timeless impact and focus on form/personality. Experimental versus minimalist. Ferris pushed technical boundaries with lenses, films, and effects to create surreal, immersive visuals. Bailey innovated through simplicity, informality, and stripping away artifice. Subject focus. Ferris aligned with the late 1960s psychedelic rock explosion. Hendrix, Donovan, Cream. Bailey captured the broader swinging London scene, including fashion, early pop rock stars, and street energy. Cultural role: both helped shape 1960s British youth culture, but Ferris visually defined the trip and counterculture peak, while Bailey embodied the stylish, aspirational side of the decade's optimism and celebrity. In essence, if Bailey photographed the cool surface of the 1960s, sharp, confident, and effortlessly stylish, Ferris captured its inner mindscape, wild, colorful, and hallucinatory. Together, they represent two poles of the era's visual revolution. 50 sources: Jimi Hendrix portraits by Ferris. Karl Ferris's portraits of Jimi Hendrix from the late 1960s are iconic examples of his pioneering psychedelic photography. Shot primarily in 1967 at Ferris's Hampstead, London studio during sessions for Are You Experienced, and extending into later work for Axis. Bold as love and electric ladyland, these images capture Hendrix's charisma while pushing visual boundaries with experimental techniques. Ferris used tools like infrared film, creating false color shifts such as glowing skin tones or surreal foliage effects, fisheye lenses for distortion, heavy color saturation, multiple exposures, and post-production manipulations to evoke the psychedelic era's mind-expanding vibe. Many portraits emphasize Hendrix's afro hairstyle, expressive face, and flamboyant clothing, e.g., the famous Gypsy Eyes narrow jacket Ferris helped select, often with backlighting for halo effects or swirling dreamlike overlays. Key examples of Ferris's Jimi Hendrix portraits: Halo portrait 1967, a profile shot with dramatic backlighting creating a glowing halo around Hendrix's head, emphasizing his silhouette and mystical presence. This was taken during the Are You Experience sessions and highlights Ferris's use of lighting for ethereal drama. Third Eye Portrait, a highly manipulated image transforming a base 1967 portrait into an optical illusion with radiating multicolored lines converging on Hendrix's third eye forehead area, creating a hypnotic, psychedelic mandala effect symbolizing enlightenment or altered consciousness. Afro/close-up portraits, intimate shots focusing on Hendrix's face and iconic afro, often enhanced with infrared or color shifts for otherworldly skin tones and textures. Group portraits with the experience, while not solo portraits, many include close-ups or central framing of Hendrix amid bandmates, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell, such as vibrant, saturated circular compositions surrounded by floral or bubble-like distortions. These blend portraiture with full psychedelic immersion, like the famous Are You Experienced back cover black and white high-contrast group shot, and US cover explosive color version with Hendrix in ornate clothing against explosive foliage. Ferris also contributed to album artwork US Are You Experienced cover, psychedelic group portrait with intense colors and patterns, Electric Ladyland, Ferris's infrared-based imagery for the cover often featuring Hendrix in a cosmic, surreal context. These portraits stand out for their fusion of rock portraiture and avant-garde experimentation, far more trippy and immersive than straightforward celebrity shots. They help define Hendrix's visual mythology as a psychedelic icon. Also, here are some of Karl's other psychedelic 60s photographs. These showcase the range from more grounded high-contrast portraits to full-on psychedelic manipulations that make the subjects appear as if emerging from another dimension. Ferris's work with Hendrix remains some of the most visually revolutionary rock photography of the era. 35 sources. David Bailey photographs of 60s rock stars. David Bailey's photographs of 1960s rock stars are quintessential examples of his minimalist, high-contrast black and white style, with some later color experiments, capturing the raw energy, rebellion, and charisma of swinging London's music scene. His portraits often feature stark lighting, direct gazes, and a sense of intimacy or defiance, helping to iconize these figures. Bailey's most famous rock-related work from the era includes his 1965 box of pinups portfolio, a box set of 36 portraits of male celebrities and cultural icons including several rock stars, as well as individual sessions with bands and solo artists. He photographed the Rolling Stones extensively in the mid to late 1960s, producing striking group and individual shots, and also captured the Beatles, notably John Lennon and Paul McCartney in tense, memorable 1965 portraits. Key examples: Mick Jagger 1964-1965, one of Bailey's most iconic images, a close-up of a young Jagger in a fur hood, exuding brooding intensity and androgynous cool. Another classic shows him in a suit with a direct, piercing stare, emphasizing his lips and hair. The Rolling Stones group portraits 1960s, Bailey shot dynamic, personality-driven images of the band, including raw shirtless or costumed setups that highlight their edgy working-class roots. Some feature surreal or playful elements like colored filters or props in later sessions, but his core 1960s work stays gritty and direct. John Lennon and Paul McCartney 1965, from the box of pin-up sessions, intimate, high-tension portraits showing Lennon and McCartney together, often with dramatic lighting and close cropping that capture their personalities, Lennon's intensity and McCartney's charm. These are among the most charged Beatles images of the decade. The Photo Gallery. See David Bailey, The Photo Gallery. Other notable 1960s rock portraits include shots of individual Stones members, like Keith Richards in velvet or brooding poses, and occasional color or experimental group work that prefigures Bailey's later style. Bailey's approach contrasted sharply with Karl Ferris's psychedelic explosions. His rock portraits are cool, understated, and personality-focused, making the stars feel accessible yet larger than life. These images help define the visual mythology of 1960s British rock, blending fashion, attitude, and documentary edge. 45 sources. Karl Ferris's photographs of 1960s rock stars are hallmarks of the psychedelic era, featuring vibrant color manipulations, infrared effects, fisheye distortions, and surreal compositions that captured the spirit of bands like Jimi Hendrix Experience, Donovan, Cream, and the Hollies. His work often served as album artwork, blending portraiture with experimental techniques to evoke hallucinatory vibes. For Jimi Hendrix and the Experience, Ferris created some of the most defining images in 1967, such as the US cover of Are You Experienced, with its warped, colorful group shot amid blooming foliage. He also produced high-contrast black and white versions for album backs, highlighting the band's intense stares and afros with dramatic backlighting. NME, Hendrix, Cream, The Hollies, the Karl Ferris psychedelic experience. Later manipulations added even more trippy elements, like enclosing the group in glowing purple bubbles for an immersive, dreamlike effect. Rock Archive, meet photographer Karl Ferris. Donovan's portraits by Ferris, shot around 1967 for albums like A Gift from a Flower to a Garden, place the folk rock star in ethereal, infrared-tinted landscapes with vivid pinks and blues, often holding symbolic items like flowers or fans amid psychedelic flora. Psychedelic Baby Mag. Karl Ferris interview. My psychedelic photographic style evolved from my self-invented experimentations with color. Its Psychedelic Baby magazine with Cream, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker. Ferris's 1967 sessions yielded bold, saturated images that emphasized their flamboyant outfits and instruments against dark backgrounds, complementing the band's heavy psychedelic sound. Hypergallery. Cream, Hypergallery. Ferris's work with the Hollies early in 1967 for their Evolution album features a montage-style group portrait with overlapping, color-shifted faces and ornate clothing, embodying the band's shift to psychedelia on the front cover, which NME magazine called the very first psychedelic photograph album cover. Hollies Evolution 1967, R vinyl. The back cover extends this with radiating rainbow text exploding outward, crediting Ferris's photography and design for the full immersive package. Hollies Evolution 1967, R vinyl. These images not only documented the stars but visually amplified the 1960s counterculture movement.